Hey everyone! Today I'm going to cover more underused functionality in Mackie Master Fader: shows, snapshots, and channel safes. This is a big subject, so I'm going to split it up into two parts. This video will cover shows and snapshots, while the next video will cover channel safes. Let's get started. Okay, so we're here in Master Fader. Again, we're starting with the default state. Let me actually change that by adjusting this channel here just to make it different, making it easy to see some changes as we explore snapshots and shows. We'll start in the top right, clicking on the Shows button, which reveals the current show. We'll start with snapshots. Snapshots store the current state of all parameters in the console to a snapshot. So I've just pressed store and I've stored all those parameters into snapshot 1. Now actually, it's not all the parameters, it's virtually all the parameters. There are a few that aren't stored and recalled by snapshots, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. Now that I've stored that state, let me manually reset the channel. And go back, click on the snapshot, click recall, and now I've recalled that snapshot, changing channel 6 back to the values that we stored in the snapshot, just as you'd expect. Snapshots can be named. We'll call this good start. Snapshots can be replaced, which takes the current state of the console and updates the snapshot with the new values in the current state of the console. And they can be deleted, which does what you expect. Create a few more, delete one of them. It's all gone. So snapshots are stored in order in a show. So these 3 snapshots make up the current show. There's actually a 4th snapshot here, the default snapshot 0. If you recall that, it's available in all shows, and it will reset the console to the default state, as the name implies. So this is handy to give you a good place to start. Now you'll notice when you recall a snapshot, the button in the top right changes to show you the number and name of the snapshot that was just recalled or the snapshot that was just created. So if I create a new one for and call it Ben, that display updates. Recall this one, display updates again. And if you make an adjustment of any parameter, you'll see a little asterisk appears. This tells you that the values stored in the snapshot differ from the current state of the console. So if you have a very sequenced show, that can be useful to know that you've made a change since the last snapshot recall. So as I said, these are all in order in a current show, and the shows can be updated, giving them a name. We'll call this more. We'll give it an image. I don't know, let's choose that one. And this one is awesome, giving it a note. See some metadata here about the show, the number of snapshots. You can have up to 99 snapshots in a show. And the number of images. Images corresponds to photos used on channels stored in snapshots. This can be a little tricky topic, so I'm going to cover images and how they work in a later video. Finally, you see some information about when the show was created and last modified, which is useful. And then on the right are the channel safes, and we're going to cover channel safes in the next video. Now we're looking at the current show, and this is the show loaded on Master Fader, and if you're connected to a mixer, the show is loaded on that mixer as well. And they are kept in sync while you are connected. Your iPad or computer can have any number of offline shows. You can have as many shows as you want, limited only by the space on your computer's drive. The offline shows are listed in creation order. So the top left is the oldest show and the bottom right is the newest show, with the current one highlighted in green. You can touch on any other show and click load, and that will load that show. Now it's important to note, if we look back here at the mixer, that the mixer didn't change when I loaded that show. That's because shows don't affect the current state of the console. Shows can take a little bit of time to load, depending on the number of snapshots and images in that show. Audio will still pass while that show is loading, but it will not be changed until you recall a snapshot. So it's a good practice to have a snapshot labeled something like start that you'll recall once the show has finished loading and has been transferred to the mixer. And you can see here I hit recall, and now the parameters have changed, the UI is updated, the DSP on my mixer will have been updated, and I'd hear the effect of these parameter changes on my audio. One other thing to note here in the offline show list is that shows have a device associated with them. So the current show is for a DL16S, and you can verify that my current device is in fact a DL16S. So if I select a show from another DL16S, I can load that one too. But if I select a show from a different device type, in this case a DL32S, you'll see load is not available, or 1608, or 32S, or 32R. So that is important to know. And it does mean that if you have a show of one device type and you want to use it on another, you will have to create it again from scratch. You cannot copy it or transfer it from one device type to another. Now, let me give you a few tips for creating snapshots and shows. As much as possible, you'll want to make your shows and snapshots in advance. You want to take advantage of the ability to create these offline and load them up onto your mixer when you're on site. This is one of the unique features of Master Fader, and it really makes your life easy because you can take your time to do the preparation in advance. Now, when you're doing this, it makes a lot of sense to try to do as much work on a single snapshot as possible, and then make a few changes based on that snapshot for other additional snapshots that you need. This makes making changes a lot easier because you can change just a single snapshot as opposed to having to change multiple snapshots. If you do need to apply changes to multiple snapshots, it's actually not very obvious how to do that. So let me show you one way of achieving this. So here I have 3 snapshots. Start, which is a nice starting point. Snapshot 2, which is different fader levels for those same channels. And again, snapshot 3 is another set of different alternate fader levels. So starting back on snapshot 1, let's say we need to make a change to the lead vocalist EQ. Now the way you do that is go in and make the change to that EQ. And now we want to store that and replace snapshot 1 with those changed settings. But how do we get those changes into snapshot 2 and 3? Well, the way to do that is to do things one channel at a time. So I've just made changes to this one channel, and I'm now going to copy it. And now I will recall snapshot 2. And here I'll paste the processing, pasting that new EQ. And now I'll replace snapshot 2. And then I'll do the same for snapshot 3. Recall it, paste processing, replace. And you can repeat this process for every channel that needs to change throughout. That's a good way of rippling a change through multiple snapshots. Now, another common thing is after you've got your show set up, how do you insert a snapshot? Let's say I want to insert a snapshot between snapshot 2 and 3. Well, there's no insert button, but again, there's a trick to doing that. Simply recall the last snapshot, in this case, snapshot 3, and now store it as snapshot 4. So I'll call it the same thing. And now I have the same thing in snapshots 3 and 4, so I can replace snapshot 3 with the new settings that I need for that new song. And give it the new name. So that's how you insert a new snapshot. If you have a lot of snapshots or your show is highly sequenced, there's a useful setting to disable the confirm snapshot recall dialog. Once you do this, you can recall a snapshot instantaneously without having to approve the recall every time. Lastly, I want to cover a bit more about parameter types. We've talked about snapshot parameters that get changed by snapshots, and show parameters, which are the few things that are unique to the show, and that includes the name, the notes, and the channel safes. But there are two other parameter types that I just want to cover. First are global parameters. These include things like solo and mute group masters. And these parameters are global and they are not affected by snapshot recall. So I can reset by recalling snapshot 0, and those parameters are unchanged. Now there's one other type of parameter, which are master fader parameters. These parameters include the selected view group and access limits, as well as some of these settings, and they are unique to each master fader. So global settings apply to all master faders, but they are unaffected by snapshots, and master fader settings are unique to each master fader instance. I hope you found that helpful. Join me in the next video when I cover channel safes and how they can be used to modify snapshot functionality. Please subscribe so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching.